The vast meeting chamber of the Galactic Alliance fell silent as the holographic displays showed another world falling to the dark swarm. Representatives from 100 different species watched in horror as the massive biological ships descended upon the planet like a plague of locusts, their dark shapes blotting out the sun. Admiral White of the Alliance Defense Fleet gripped the edges of his podium, his 4 arms trembling with a mixture of fury and despair. "This is the 8th world we have lost this cycle," he announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The dark swarm grows stronger with each victory, absorbing our technology and resources into their collective." The assembled representatives murmured among themselves. For centuries, the dark swarm had been a growing threat to galactic peace. They were an ancient race that had evolved beyond normal biological constraints, creating living ships that could travel through space and consume everything in their path. "Our energy weapons are useless against their adapted shields," continued White, changing the display to show the Alliance's latest battle footage. "They have learned to absorb or reflect everything we throw at them. Even our most advanced quantum disruptors barely scratch their outer hulls now." In the footage, sleek Alliance warships fired brilliant beams of energy at the organic vessels of the dark swarm. The biological ships, looking like massive dark whales swimming through space, simply shrugged off the attacks. Their surface rippled and pulsed, absorbing the energy and using it to grow stronger. "What about the new plasma cannons?" asked one of the representatives, their bioluminescent skin flickering with anxiety. White shook his head. The dark swarm adapted to those within 2 battles. Their biological ships now generate magnetic fields that disperse plasma weapons before they can do any real damage. The chamber erupted in worried discussions. The Alliance had always prided itself on having the most advanced technology in the known galaxy. Their ships were powered by zero-point energy, their weapons could tear apart atoms, and their shields could deflect asteroids. Yet none of it seemed to matter against the dark swarm. "There might be one option left," said Professor Reed, the Alliance's chief scientist. The old alien's crystalline body sparkled as he moved to the center of the chamber. "We've detected signals from a previously unknown civilization in what we considered empty space. They call themselves humans." The chamber grew quiet again. First contact with a new species was always significant news, even in these dark times. "What makes these humans special?" asked White, his secondary eyes narrowing with interest. Reed activated a new hologram, showing a small solar system with 9 planets. "They're relatively primitive by our standards. They've only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. But here's what's interesting. They still use physical projectile weapons, kinetic energy, explosives, nuclear devices, things we abandoned centuries ago as wasteful and crude." Several representatives scoffed at the idea. Using physical ammunition instead of energy weapons, relying on nuclear fission instead of zero-point energy. It seemed absurd. But White's expression had changed. All 4 of his eyes were now wide with realization. "The dark swarm have never encountered a civilization that still uses such weapons," he said slowly. "They never needed to adapt to physical projectiles or nuclear radiation because every advanced race they faced had already moved beyond such technology." "Exactly," said Reed. "The humans' primitive weapons might be exactly what we need. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways." White looked around the chamber, at the faces of representatives from worlds that were still free from the dark swarm's terror. They needed a solution, even if it came from an unexpected source. "Send a diplomatic mission to Earth immediately," he ordered. "If these humans and their primitive weapons can help us, we need them, before it's too late." As the chamber buzzed with renewed hope, another alert flashed across the holographic display. The dark swarm had begun their attack on yet another world. The race against time had begun. Captain Tom Miller stood at the bridge of the EWS Thunder, staring at the strange signal flashing on his command screen. After 15 years in Earth's space fleet, he thought he'd seen everything. But this was different. The signal wasn't human in origin, yet it followed a clear pattern that could only be artificial. "What do you make of it, Rob?" he asked his communications officer. Rob studied the signal patterns carefully. "It's definitely a distress call, sir, but the frequency, nothing in our database matches it. The Thunder was humanity's newest warship, built to patrol Earth's outer colonies. At first glance, it looked primitive compared to the sleek designs seen in science fiction movies. Its hull was thick with layers of titanium armor. Instead of energy weapons, it carried massive railguns and a full complement of nuclear missiles. "Full scan of the area," Miller ordered. "Let's find out who's calling for help." The ship's sensors swept through space, and suddenly the main screen lit up. There, drifting between two asteroids, was a vessel unlike anything they'd ever seen. It seemed to be made of crystal and light, its hull glowing with a soft blue radiance. "Life signs detected," reported Susan from the science station. "But they're different. Not human." Miller took a deep breath. First contact. Every space captain trained for this moment, but no one really expected it to happen. "Take us in closer, but keep weapons ready. Let's help them if we can, but stay alert." As the Thunder approached the alien vessel, they could see the damage. Parts of its crystalline hull were shattered, and its engine section flickered weakly. "They're hailing us," Rob announced. Miller straightened his uniform. "Put them through." The main screen flickered to life, and the bridge crew fell silent. Two aliens appeared on the screen. One had 4 arms and eyes like polished silver. The other's body seemed to be made of living crystal. Despite their strange appearance, their distress was clear. "Unknown vessel," the 4-armed alien spoke in perfect English, much to everyone's surprise. "I am Ambassador Green of the Galactic Alliance. We come seeking Earth's help." Miller exchanged looks with his crew. "I'm Captain Miller of the Earth warship Thunder. How are you speaking our language?" "Universal translator," the crystal alien explained. "I am Professor Reed. We've been studying your civilization for some time. We need your help desperately." Over the next hour, Green and Reed explained the situation. The Dark Swarm, the fallen worlds, the Alliance's failing weapons. With each word, Miller's expression grew more serious. "Let me get this straight," he said finally. "Your advanced energy weapons don't work against these Dark Swarm ships." "Correct," Reed answered. "They adapt too quickly to energy-based attacks. Our technology is too advanced." Miller couldn't help but smile at the irony. For years, humans had dreamed of meeting advanced alien civilizations, hoping to learn from their superior technology. Now those same aliens needed humanity's primitive weapons. "Show me these Dark Swarm ships," Miller requested. The aliens transmitted images of the biological vessels. The Thunder's tactical officer, Jack, studied them carefully. "Sir," Jack said, excitement in his voice, "their outer hull might be immune to energy weapons, but it looks organic. A good old-fashioned tungsten rod from our railguns would tear right through it. And if they're biological, they'd have no defense against radiation." Miller finished the thought. "They've never needed to develop protection against nuclear weapons." Green's 4 eyes widened. "You would still use such dangerous weapons?" "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways," Miller said, quoting an ancient military saying. "We'll help you, but first I need to contact Earth Command. This could change everything." As Miller sent his report to Earth, he looked at the strange alien ship beside them. Humanity had just joined a much larger galaxy, but not in the way anyone had expected. They weren't going to learn about advanced technology. They were going to teach the galaxy about the weapons they'd never abandoned. The real question was, were they ready for what would come next? Earth's military command center buzzed with activity. 12 generals sat around a massive table, their faces illuminated by holographic displays showing the Thunder and its alien visitors. Captain Miller's report had sparked an emergency meeting that would decide humanity's first major action in galactic politics. General Harris, head of Earth's Space Command, stood at the front of the room. "The Alliance is offering us advanced technology in exchange for our help. The question is, do we risk our newest warship on what might be a suicide mission? The room erupted in discussion. The Thunder was Earth's most advanced vessel, but compared to Alliance ships, it was like a World War I battleship next to a modern aircraft carrier. Our weapons might be simple, Miller spoke from the video screen, but that's exactly why they could work. The Dark Swarm have never faced anything like our railguns or nuclear weapons. Professor Reed, the crystalline alien scientist, stepped forward on the screen. Your tungsten rounds would move too fast for their biological hulls to adapt. And nuclear radiation, they have no defense against it. None at all. General Fisher, the youngest of the command staff, leaned forward. But can one ship make a difference, even with our weapons? Sometimes one ship is all you need, Miller replied. The Thunder was built to fight dirty. We've got thick armor instead of energy shields, railguns instead of laser cannons, nuclear missiles instead of plasma torpedoes. We're everything the Dark Swarm isn't prepared for. The room fell quiet as everyone considered the stakes. If they succeeded, Earth would gain powerful allies and advanced technology. If they failed, they'd lose their best ship and crew. Ambassador Green spoke next, his four arms moving in elegant patterns. We've seen the Dark Swarm adapt to every weapon we've used against them, but they adapt through experience. They've never experienced anything like your weapons because every civilization they've encountered abandoned such technology long ago. What's your plan, Captain Miller? General Harris asked. Miller brought up a tactical display. The Thunder can carry more nuclear weapons than we've ever loaded before. We'll modify them with Alliance FTL drives so they can catch the biological ships. Our railguns will be our primary weapons. Simple tungsten rods accelerated to incredible speeds. No energy weapons for them to adapt to. The display showed the Thunder's planned modifications. Alliance engineers would help strengthen the hull with new materials, but they'd keep the basic design. The ship needed to stay primitive enough to surprise the Dark Swarm. The crew? General Harris asked. They're all volunteers, Miller answered. They know the risks. We'll be alone out there, hunting the biggest predators in the galaxy. But someone has to do it. Professor Reed added, we've prepared detailed maps of Dark Swarm territory. Captain Miller's tactical officer believes he can predict their patrol patterns. They're biological creatures. They have to feed. That makes them predictable. The generals looked at each other. Earth had always hoped to join the galactic community, but not like this. They had expected to be the students, learning from advanced races. Instead, they would be the teachers, showing the galaxy why humanity had never fully abandoned its primitive weapons. General Harris stood up straight. Captain Miller, you have authorization to proceed. Show these Dark Swarm why humans still believe in kinetic weapons and nuclear deterrence. Yes, sir, Miller replied with a grim smile. One more thing, Harris added. The Alliance says these Dark Swarm ships are biological. They feel pain. Make sure they feel every shot. As the meeting ended, Miller looked at his alien guests. We'll need a few days to modify the Thunder and load extra weapons. Then we go hunting. Ambassador Green's silver eyes reflected a mix of hope and worry. The galaxy has never seen a hunt like this before. No, Miller agreed, it hasn't. Because it's never seen humans fight before. The Thunder floated in Earth's orbit, its dark hull being modified with Alliance technology. Soon, it would carry humanity's oldest weapons into battle against the galaxy's greatest terror. The hunt was about to begin. The Thunder moved silently through space, its dark hull barely visible against the backdrop of stars. On the bridge, Captain Miller watched as 3 Dark Swarm patrol ships appeared on the main screen. They looked like giant space whales, their biological hulls pulsing with an eerie purple light. They haven't spotted us yet, Jack reported from Tactical. Their sensors are all focused on energy signatures. Our cold-running systems are invisible to them. Professor Reed and Ambassador Green stood at the back of the bridge, watching nervously. They had never seen a ship operate with such basic technology. The Thunder was running dark, using minimal power, like an old submarine hunting its prey. "Railguns charge," Jack announced. "Nuclear missiles armed and ready." Miller nodded slowly. "Let's show them how humans fight. Target the leader. Fire when ready." The Thunder's main railgun came to life. With a thunderous vibration that shook the entire ship, it launched a solid tungsten rod at near light speed. There was no bright energy beam, no glowing plasma torpedo, just cold, hard metal moving faster than the dark swarm could react. The rod struck the lead biological ship dead center. Instead of being absorbed or deflected like an energy weapon, it tore straight through the creature's hull. The dark swarm ship writhed in space, purple blood spraying from the massive hole in its side. "Direct hit," Jack shouted. "Their hull is breaching." Ambassador Green's 4 eyes widened in shock. "Impossible. One shot." "That's the beauty of kinetic weapons," Miller explained, his eyes fixed on the battle. "No fancy energy shields can stop that much mass moving at that speed. Fire nuclear missiles, spread pattern." The Thunder launched 4 missiles. The dark swarm ships, still reeling from the railgun attack, tried to move away. But these weren't normal nuclear weapons. They had been modified with Alliance FTL drives. They crossed the space between ships instantly. The explosions were silent in space, but the effects were devastating. The dark swarm ships had no protection against radiation. Their biological hulls began to die, cells breaking down under the nuclear assault. "The radiation," Professor Reed whispered. "They've never evolved defenses against it. Their adaptive abilities are useless." The wounded dark swarm ships tried to fight back. They fired energy beams that the Alliance had feared for centuries. But the Thunder's thick armor, designed to absorb impacts rather than energy, shrugged off the attacks. "Their weapons are having minimal effect," Susan reported from the science station. "Our armor is holding." Miller allowed himself a small smile. "Fire railguns again. Put them out of their misery." 2 more thunderous shots rang through the ship. 2 more dark swarm vessels were torn apart by simple metal rods moving at incredible speeds. The third ship, heavily damaged by radiation, tried to escape. "Should we pursue?" Jack asked. "No," Miller replied. "Let it run. Let it tell the others what happened here. Let them learn to fear something new." The bridge crew watched as the surviving dark swarm ship fled, leaving its dead companions floating in space. Ambassador Green stepped forward, his hands trembling. "In all my years," he said, "I've never seen dark swarm ships defeated so easily. Your weapons, they're so simple, yet so effective." "Sometimes the old ways are best," Miller replied. "Humanity never forgot that. We kept developing energy weapons and shields, yes, but we never abandoned our kinetic weapons. Never stopped building nuclear devices, because sometimes you need to be able to just punch through a problem." Professor Reed was already analyzing the battle data. "The dark swarm will try to adapt. But how do you adapt to a piece of metal moving at near light speed? How do you evolve radiation resistance in a single generation?" "You don't," Miller said. "That's the point. Now let's go hunting. The dark swarm need to learn that there's a new predator in the galaxy, and we have a lot more missiles to deliver." The Thunder turned toward deeper space, leaving the dead dark swarm ships behind. The first battle was over. The hunt had truly begun. 2 weeks after their first victory, the Thunder prowled through an asteroid field at the edge of dark swarm territory. The ship's heat sensors, technology that the Alliance had long ago abandoned as too simple, proved perfectly suited for tracking the biological ships. "Contact," Susan called from her science station. "Large heat signature behind the 3rd asteroid. It's big, probably a command ship." Miller studied the thermal image. The dark swarm vessel glowed bright red on the screen, its biological systems generating heat that no mechanical ship would produce. The Alliance's energy-based sensors would have missed it completely. "They're learning," Jack reported. "This one's covered in some kind of organic armor, thicker than what we've seen before." Professor Reed analyzed the readings. They're trying to adapt, but they can only do so much. Their biological nature is both their strength and their weakness. Doesn't matter how thick their armor is, Miller said. Radiation will still get through. How many nuclear missiles do we have left? 12, Jack answered, plus plenty of railgun rounds. The Thunder had been busy. In 2 weeks, they'd destroyed 15 Dark Swarm ships. More importantly, they'd taught Alliance forces how to fight effectively. Simple kinetic weapons, copied from human designs, were now being manufactured across Alliance space. Message from Alliance Command. Rob announced from Communications. 3 more colonies have successfully repelled Dark Swarm attacks using the new weapons. They're calling it the Human Defense Protocol. Miller nodded with satisfaction. Good. Now let's add another victory to the list. Battle stations. The Thunder powered up its weapons, but maintained minimal energy output otherwise. They had perfected this hunting technique, running dark, using only basic sensors, approaching like a shark through water. They haven't spotted us, Susan reported. Their attention is focused on the energy signatures from the nearby Alliance outpost. Classic predator behavior, Professor Reed observed. They're so focused on their prey, they don't notice they've become prey themselves. The Thunder glided closer. The Dark Swarm command ship was massive, easily 10 times their size. Its purple-black hull pulsed with life, unaware of the danger approaching. First shot. Railgun, Miller ordered. Let's test that new armor. The ship shuddered as the railgun fired. The tungsten rod, moving at near light speed, struck the command ship's reinforced hull. The new armor layer split open like paper hit by a bullet. Direct hit, Jack called out. They're responding, but they're shooting at our last position. They still can't track us properly. The command ship fired energy beams wildly, its biological sensors confused by the Thunder's minimal energy signature. Meanwhile, the human vessel circled for another attack. Launch nuclear missiles, Miller commanded. Full spread. Let's make this quick. 4 missiles shot out, their Alliance-modified FTL drives activating instantly. They detonated around the massive biological ship, bathing it in deadly radiation. The command ship's hull began to wither and die. Ambassador Green, watching from his usual spot on the bridge, shook his head in amazement. We spent centuries trying to defeat them with advanced technology. All we needed was to think simpler. Railgun's finishing shot, Jack reported, firing again. The tungsten rod tore through the dying command ship, splitting it in half. Purple blood froze in space as the massive vessel died. Signal the Alliance, Miller ordered. Tell them their outpost is safe, and send them our sensor data. Every victory teaches us more about how to fight these things. As the crew logged another successful hunt, Professor Reed approached Miller. The Dark Swarm are changing their patterns. They're becoming more cautious. They're learning to fear. Good, Miller replied. Fear is nature's way of teaching predators to be careful, and they're learning that humans are the most dangerous predators of all. The Thunder turned away from the dead command ship, its sensors already searching for new targets. The hunt would continue until the galaxy was safe, one dead Dark Swarm ship at a time. The Thunder's bridge was silent as the crew stared at the massive structure on their view screen. After a month of hunting Dark Swarm ships, they had finally found what they were looking for, the primary hive cluster. It's bigger than we thought, Susan said quietly from her science station. The thermal readings were off the charts. The heat signature suggests it's about the size of Earth's moon. The hive cluster pulsed with purple light, countless biological ships moving around it like bees around a giant hive. This was where the Dark Swarm originated, where their ships were grown, and where their leaders lived. We've only got 4 nuclear missiles left, Jack reported from Tactical, and about 20 railgun rounds. Not enough for a target that size. Professor Reed's crystalline body sparkled with nervous energy. The Alliance lost 3 fleets trying to destroy this place. Energy weapons just made it stronger. It absorbed the technology and adapted. Miller stood from his captain's chair, studying the tactical display. The Thunder had been tremendously successful in its hunting mission, destroying over 30 Dark Swarm ships. But this was different. This was their nest. "Look at the structure," Miller said, pointing to specific areas on the screen. "See those darker spots? Those are heat sinks. The whole thing is basically one giant living organism. And like any organism, it needs to regulate its temperature." Ambassador Green finished, his 4 eyes widening with realization. Miller nodded. "Exactly. Those heat sinks are vital organs. If we can get close enough." He turned to his crew. "Rob, send a message to Alliance Command. Tell them we found the hive. Jack, I need options for our remaining weapons." The crew worked quickly, studying the massive structure. The hive cluster was heavily defended, with hundreds of Dark Swarm ships patrolling around it. But the Thunder had one advantage. They were still hard to detect. "Captain," Jack said after a few minutes, "I have an idea. It's crazy, but it might work." "Those are my favorite kind of ideas," Miller replied. "Let's hear it." Jack brought up a detailed scan of the hive cluster. "We can't destroy the whole thing. But we don't have to. See these main heat sinks. If we can overload them, the whole structure will cook itself from the inside." "How do we overload them?" Ambassador Green asked. "We put our remaining nuclear missiles inside them," Jack explained. "The radiation will disrupt their biological cooling system. The hive's own heat production will do the rest." Professor Reed studied the plan. "The missiles would need to be precisely placed. You'd have to get dangerously close." "Close isn't the problem," Miller said. "Getting out afterward is. Once those missiles detonate, every Dark Swarm ship in range will know exactly where we are." The bridge fell silent again. They all understood what this meant. This could be a one-way mission. "I won't order anyone to stay," Miller announced to his crew. "This is volunteer only. If we do this, there's a good chance we don't make it back." Rob spoke first from his communication station. "Earth is counting on us, sir. I'm in." "Me too," Susan said. "Someone has to shoot the guns," Jack added with a grim smile. One by one, every crew member voiced their agreement. They had come too far to turn back now. Miller looked at their alien guests. "Professor Reed, Ambassador Green, we'll understand if you want to transfer to an Alliance ship before we begin." The 2 aliens exchanged looks. "We started this journey together," Green said. "We'll finish it together." Miller nodded, pride in his crew filling his chest. "Then let's make a plan. We've got one shot at this, and we're going to make it count." The Thunder drifted in the darkness of space, preparing for its final hunt. Soon, they would strike at the heart of the Dark Swarm, armed with humanity's oldest and deadliest weapons. The galaxy's greatest predators were about to learn why humans never stopped building weapons that could end worlds. The Thunder moved through space like a ghost, its engines running silent, its energy signature almost non-existent. Around it, hundreds of Dark Swarm ships patrolled their massive hive cluster, unaware of the human vessel sliding between them. "Distance to first target?" Miller asked quietly, as if the enemy could hear them through space. 2,000 kilometers to the primary heat sink, Jack replied. "We're on course. They still haven't detected us." The plan was simple but dangerous. They would approach the 3 main heat sinks of the hive cluster, plant their nuclear missiles deep inside them, and trigger them simultaneously. The resulting radiation would disrupt the hive's ability to regulate its temperature, causing it to literally cook itself. "First heat sink in visual range," Susan reported. The massive organic structure looked like a giant gill, pulsing as it released excess heat from the hive cluster. The Thunder approached carefully, avoiding the regular patrol patterns they had studied. "Launch first missile," Miller ordered. The missile shot out silently, its Alliance FTL drive activating for a microsecond to place it perfectly inside the heat sink. The biological structure didn't even react to the intrusion. "One down," Jack said, moving to second target. The next 40 minutes were the tensest of their lives. The Thunder glided between patrol ships, placed its second missile, and began approaching the final heat sink. Everything had gone perfectly according to plan. Then everything went wrong. Multiple contacts. Susan shouted. They'd spotted us. A patrol of Dark Swarm ships had changed its pattern unexpectedly. The Thunder was caught in the open, still carrying its final missile. Evasive action. Miller commanded. Jack, give me options. The Thunder rolled hard, avoiding the first wave of energy weapons. Its thick armor absorbed the few hits that landed, but they couldn't take sustained fire. We need to place that last missile, Jack said. We're too close to abort now. Miller gripped his chair as the ship shook from another hit. How many railgun rounds do we have? 12, Jack replied. Not enough for all of them. Not trying to kill them all, Miller said. Just need a path. Target the closest ships and fire everything we have. We're going straight in. The Thunder's railgun roared to life, sending tungsten rods tearing through the biological ships in their way. The simple kinetic weapons did their job, creating a brief corridor through the enemy formation. Full power to engines, Miller ordered. Get us to that heat sink. The Thunder shot forward, taking hits but refusing to die. Its human-built armor, thought primitive by Alliance standards, proved its worth as energy weapons splashed against it. Heat sink in range, Jack called out, launching final missile. The last nuclear weapon shot out just as a massive energy beam struck the Thunder's engine section. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Missile is in position, Jack reported. All 3 targets locked. Miller looked at his crew, at Ambassador Green and Professor Reed, at the approaching swarm of enemy ships. Send the detonation signal. Then get us out of here. Whatever power we have left, use it. 3 nuclear explosions bloomed silently inside the hive cluster's heat sinks. Radiation flooded the biological cooling systems, disrupting their cellular structure. Almost immediately, the massive structure began to heat up. It's working, Professor Reed shouted, watching his sensors. The hive cluster's temperature is rising exponentially. The Thunder limped away from the dying hive, its engines struggling. Behind them, the massive biological structure began to break apart as its own heat destroyed it from within. Dark Swarm ships are disorganized, Susan reported. They're losing their connection to the hive. 2 days later, the battered Thunder docked at an Alliance station. Its hull was scared, its engines barely functioning, but it had succeeded. The Dark Swarm hive cluster was destroyed, its ships scattered and leaderless. As Miller stood with his crew receiving honors from the Alliance Council, Ambassador Green asked him a question. How did humans become such effective warriors? Miller smiled. We never forgot our roots. While other species reached for the stars and abandoned their old weapons, we kept one foot on the ground. Sometimes the most advanced solution isn't the best solution. The Thunder's victory changed the galaxy forever. Humanity was welcomed into the Alliance not as primitive newcomers, but as equals who had preserved knowledge others had forgotten. And in the years that followed, whenever a new threat emerged, people remembered the lesson of the Thunder. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways.